Well. Here we are again talking about the Canadian Football League. Ironically, David does another show called Locked On Leafs, and he had Griff and I. We're kind of like the three amigos at the Argos games together to talk about the Maple Leafs after a very interesting evening of hockey. But we're here to talk about football. And simply put, we have a new commissioner. Firstly, what I'll say to begin with is that he comes from TSN. He was a former president of TSN. So this guy comes from a knowledge corner about the Canadian Football League. What do you want to do to intro him?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was kind of the big. We were waiting, and then finally, boom! It was reported that we were going to be getting a new commissioner, and that it was going to be kind of a different path this time for the league, right? Getting Stuart Johnson, I know that it hasn't always been former football players that have been commissioners of the CFL, but to get one that was a former broadcast president certainly is a different. I think it speaks to kind of where the CFL wanted to put more of its emphasis on.
And we kind of predicted that. It was kind of obvious. Having had a former player, still with a business background, but a former player who had an understanding of the inner workings of the game itself, getting an opportunity to put his fingerprints all over, him being a commissioner. Now, there are things that he wanted to do that he didn't succeed in. He was interrupted. The Canadian Football League at whole were interrupted by COVID. Financial problems ensued because of that situation. And the biggest thing that happened in my mind that hurts the most for those of us that believe the Canadian Football League is central to the fabric of this country, especially at this time, is having a team on the East Coast to join the one that's on the West Coast and everyone in between. And that was the missed boat because of COVID. Nobody's going to convince me otherwise. That's the only reason it happened. I was well aware, and we were all well aware behind the scenes, not just, the commissioner or the CFL talking about, we're going to get another team. There were owners that were ready to put up money. And here's the important point that mustn't be forgotten. The town was ready to put money down. They were already agreeing to put money down. It was just a question of finalizing some stuff, and it would have happened at the very moment that the pandemic hit. And it went away. Money, towns didn't have extra money to spend. So there you go. Austerity kicks in. What's the first thing you get rid of? Something that you promised money to that you don't have any investment in, and say goodbye to that.
Yeah, essentially it was, we're at a point in time where you kind of have to close the purse strings a little bit. Should we be funding a stadium at a time where we're not bringing in a lot of revenue? Probably not. I can totally understand that. And it kind of speaks to, and I know a lot of people like to bring that up, but doesn't it also speak to the CFL not thinking about this well before? Like, we've been at 9 teams since 2016. When did the Red Blacks come back? 2016 or so. Like, there's been a few years. Teams that do expansion, like I look at the PWHL. I think that's a pretty reasonable example. Similar business models, right? Where it's not just one city. You can't just expand to one city with these leagues. Even the WNBA is kind of similar too. Usually you go into 2. The reason is you don't want an imbalance of teams and schedules. And so I think probably the biggest
balance, though, David, that's the whole point. The CFL creates the balance.
Right. And they created the imbalance by only having that one team being the expansion team all those years ago, and then having to try to play catch up.
Oh, you
guess what?
They
it's
brought
kind of caught up to them.
Montreal and Ottawa in. They should have brought.
Yeah.
Because Ottawa was gone. Montreal spent some time away. And, okay. Well, you can only deal with the hand you're dealt. And,
Yep.
and right now, the Canadian Football League has 9 teams. 10 would be great. As I said, I gave my patriotic statement. The problems with that which may be obvious, but also something people may not realize, is that the pie that the Canadian Football League shares is their ticket sales, which they drive on their own, and the shared income from the TSN contract, from TV revenue. Bringing in another partner, they can be responsible for their, creating their ticket market, but they have to share. They'll get a tenth of the share, and it'll go from a ninth to a tenth of a share when they come in. And the concern too is, I don't think you can blame, and this is projection on my part. I don't know how easy it is for this league to bring in a team when they've had teams that have fallen and they've had to support. Yep. So unless there's a guarantee that team will survive, there's always going to be that little bit of not buying in by the teams, by certain teams or whatever. So that's one of the handicaps of doing it, David, in my opinion.
No, that's fair. That's a fair statement. And that's probably why also a lot of owners, that you think about, why hasn't an owner stepped up? Well, you're asking them to take on quite a financial commitment, right? How many times have we thought that the ownership group in Montreal was settled, only for the owner to go, can't do it anymore, and then the league has to take it over? Twice, I believe, right?
Yes.
It seems like this time around they seem to be okay, but that could change. That can always change. But it seems like the league has gotten themselves off to a better start, position with the ownership. But yeah, you need to get your house in order first before you can look elsewhere. I totally get that. It just would have been nice if you have found a way to say, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we can just make sure that everything's kind of lined up properly, and we don't have this talk about needing to find another team and all this stuff. It just seems like it just adds it. Like, it's funny because there was a lot of talk about and one of the questions, I'm trying to remember the exact question. I think it was when he was asked about the 10th team, he's like, well, we got to make sure that the 9 that we currently have are on good footing,
which they are. I think the biggest problem for bringing a Canadian Football League in, a new Canadian Football League team, has 2 things they have to take care of. The first and primary is ownership, good ownership with the financial resilience to maybe go through that initial period when the popularity may not be that good, or pick up after the initial interest because it's new of having a team. Either way, that can handle, for whatever reason, a drop off in finances that requires them to prop the team up. But the second thing is, there has to be a partnership with the local community, just as there is one with the Alouettes, the Argos, the Ticats, and I can keep going west. I can keep going. That all those stadiums that they play in, except for Saskatchewan and I think Winnipeg to a degree, are monies that they got from government to help them build the stadium. Or there was an event that took place, like the Commonwealth Games in Hamilton, that offered an opportunity for a stadium to be torn down and be rebuilt, so and become Tim Hortons Field. So there's that issue as well. So, that's the part I think, David, they're having a hard time with. If they had a commitment from the town, the city of Halifax, I think they'd have a team tomorrow. It's going to the town and the new mayor and the new people in charge at their city hall, convincing them that it's a good idea to have a team and we need you to invest some money, whether it be like what the discussion was, is temporary stadium seats, much like they do for their soccer, can they do something that's acceptable by the Canadian Football League? I know you won't be. You're an NFL guy, so you're looking for 12 or $13 million TV screens.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's one thing to bring it. You're totally right. It's one thing to bring in a team. Who's paying for it? Oh, you need a stadium. Where is the stadium going to go? Who's paying for the stadium? Is it only going to be football specific? Can another team play out of it? I think like there was an opportunity. The reason why we saw Halifax is an opportunity. There's a soccer team there. There is already a built up momentum towards
a need for a renter, somebody who needs.
Yeah, it wasn't going to just be a one-purpose stadium. This was supposed to be viewed as, okay, we can get by with having quite a few more, a bit more involved in just the CFL.
No kidding, 10 games a year.
10 games a year plus whatever the soccer team like.
Yeah.
I totally get it. It's a big undercut for it's a big underrating for a city like Halifax, that small population. It's not Toronto, it's not Montreal, it's not Vancouver, where it's a big city and it's easy to draw in people. But here's the one thing Halifax does have: the unique charm of it. No other, like maybe Vancouver has a bit of that because it's on the coast. The tourism in the summer. If you can add a football stadium to that, come watch CFL football in Halifax in the summer. So I would be going. I would probably go and do a trip out there very easily to go watch a football game. Absolutely.
That would be something that I've done already, and I don't see why I couldn't do it again. So I agree with you, obviously. Yeah.
And look, I totally get it. Halifax is not the cheapest place to go and visit. Frank, you've done it.
Yeah.
I looked into it once and it didn't meet with my timeline / budget, but it is something that you can plan for. I know so many people who go to CFL games, and like, trust me, if you really, really, really wanted to go, there's a way to make it work. And there's a way to make it work within a budget.
And that's good to hear. All right, why don't we listen to what the CFL, a production of the CFL, an introduction to the commissioner. I'll try to get some notes, keep some notes so that we can talk about all the things he brings up. All right?
Okay.
So the commissioner of the Canadian Football League, Stuart Johnston.
My first CFL memory is surprisingly clear because I was 5 years old. I grew up in Ottawa, and my next door neighbor was the great kicker from, at the time, the Ottawa Rough Riders. His name was Jerry Oregon, legend. I was friends with his son Jamie. We spent a lot of time at Mr. Oregon's house, and of course went to a number of those Ottawa games and cheered him on from the stands. The Ottawa team played in the 1976 Grey Cup. I was 5 years old, I was on the couch, my family was there, and Mr. Oregon decided, and I only found this out later, on his own, without telling his teammates, without telling his coach, he faked a punt. I remember watching in amazement. His arm was twirling in the air. I don't think he was a natural runner, and he gained 52 yards for a critical first down, and my household went bananas. That is my first memory. I can't wait to just dig in, work with the team at the CFL offices, work with the Board of Governors, work with the club presidents and the club staff, the GMs, the players, the coaches, and ultimately work with the fans. This is an incredible product that we are caretakers of, and I can't wait to get going to see where we can take it. Probably the best piece of advice as I've made my first major career change in 30 years was to listen. I think my next 100 days are going to be a listening tour. I want to walk through our team and listen to what they have to say, understand what they're most excited about, understand what they're working on. I've got lots to learn. I have to learn about football operations, governance, the unique characteristics of the CFL. And I want to do a cross-country tour, meet with the clubs, and understand their needs, their challenges, and see how we can work together. We have great momentum right now. We've seen growth in attendance. We've seen growth in engagement on social. We've seen growth with our audience numbers on television. And we've got to continue to do that. We need continuous improvement. And I think there is so much growth potential still left in this league. And I think if we achieve all those metrics, we're going to improve our financial performance at a club level and at a league level, and we're going to improve our fan engagement experience, and all of that's going to lead to good things. We're going to focus on entertainment. We have one of the most entertaining products in the world when it comes to sport, and I want to continue to grow that entertainment. I want all of us to be thinking very closely as we make our decisions on how we're going to push entertainment so we can grab our consumers' attention, our partners' attention, and retain those fans. We are the only major sports league with all of our teams in Canada. And we have an incredibly passionate fan base that is delivering us incredible audiences, great numbers at the gate. We've got obviously some unique rules to our sport, and I think those are fantastic. I love to feel the sense of patriotism that we feel across the country right now. And I think, how can that possibly be anything but great for the CFL? We are the Canadian Football League. 9 Canadian teams, incredible Canadian representation, over a century of history and legacy with our sport. I know that partners have already been reaching out, saying, how can we align ourselves with such a Canadian institution? And I'm looking forward to exploring those further. I think when you're a major pro sports league, a media deal is a critical component to your overall business. And the next one will absolutely be important to the CFL. I come from a background in media. I've negotiated an awful lot of media deals. I'm looking forward to working very closely with our team in preparation. And I think that one of the things that I've always had as a philosophy in business is to, if you have a great partner, an incumbent partner, a long-term partner, you should have a conversation with them first. And so I want to have a conversation with our incumbent at Bell, and I'm going to express kind of what our thoughts are as we look to optimize our next media deal. And I think the word optimize is important. When I think about that, it's a balance of objectives. Of course, maximizing revenue is going to be an objective, but we also need to maximize reach. We also want to grow our audiences in certain relevant areas, for example, younger audiences. To do that, I want to focus on growing the game of football in Canada. I really do think the more people that can be a part of the game, to touch a football, to throw a football, to participate in flag football, I think we can grow the game, and I'm excited for the sport here in Canada. Seeing my signature on the game ball, it's a mix of feeling like I'm having an out-of-body experience. When I was a kid, the number one gift I asked my parents for, as about a 9-year-old, was an official CFL game ball. I loved the sport, and having an official ball to throw around with my brothers was going to be a dream. And it was a big gift to ask for. I said, combine my Christmas, combine birthday, whatever it takes, I would love one of those. I did finally get a game ball. It was an outstanding present. And now to think my signature is on one of those game balls, I couldn't be more proud. I'm incredibly humbled, and I'm super excited. My first CFL memory is surprisingly clear because I was 5 years old. I grew up in Ottawa, and my next door neighbor was the great kicker from, at the time, the Ottawa Rough Riders. His name was Jerry Oregon, legend. I was friends.
Jeez, couldn't get it rid there for a second. Sorry, David, I took you out of the group.
You were so captivated by it, you wanted to watch it twice.
No, I wasn't that captivated. I was captivated by my ignorance. That's all I was captivated by. Nothing else. Okay, so first of all, box to check. He said he's a CFL fan. How important is that?
Well, I think it's important to truly understand the league, understand what the league is about, what makes the league. What's the best way to put it? What makes the league unique and what makes the league special? I think that's something that the fans need to understand, that this commissioner gets what this league is about, and so that he's not coming in and it's into a situation being like, I wasn't much of a CFL guy growing up or anything like that. That would kind of, I think, throw people off in the wrong way.
We've had that commissioner.
Right? You need somebody that truly gets what this league is about, what makes this league unique, and what's something that maybe hasn't been capitalized about with this league, right? You need someone that's going to truly appreciate kind of the different things that this league has going for it and being able to, put it out there, broadcast it to the people in a way that maybe it hasn't been done before.
Well, he has, we talked earlier about his broadcasting experience. We know that he, along with his family in Ottawa, he talked about the first Grey Cup. Jerry Organ was a neighbor, knew his kids, wanted to play with an official CFL football. So he had the interest. His first game was the 76 Grey Cup. And so that's important that he has an understanding of what makes this game great. But that's only the beginning. He has to be able to work, first of all, and like he said, he needs to learn about how to work the Canadian Football League. So he has to get in there and understand the people that work there and why they do things, how they do things. This is the part we see this so many times when new executives go to companies, whether it's sports or anything else. There's a time period where they don't do anything. And it gives the impression that they're not even thinking of doing anything. What they're doing is getting a lay of the land. So what he's told us is he's going to get a lay of the land. You won't hear much about what he's doing. More, he'll be looking at what everybody else is doing and beginning to, think about what he can do to make it better. So I wouldn't expect a lot of activity emanating from the commissioner's office at this point. It would be stuff that that the CFL has in the works, in the pipeline, or thinking about doing, that he'll basically just check mark and go ahead and do it. I don't see any reason not to. That'd be probably his position. What do you think?
Yeah, you hear him talking about going out and doing a tour.
Right.
Some people kind of took that into two different things, in that, like, how long is this going to take to do that? Like, why do you need to go out and do a tour? They've done those before in the past. What makes this worthwhile to do again? To me, it's like, if you're just going to go and talk to team employees and maybe some fans who are already here, it seems redundant to me. He should be talking to people who aren't there. You're talking about bringing in fans, finding out, why aren't fans there? Why aren't fans showing up to in certain places? Also, again, I don't like to make it about us, but find out why your league isn't getting the coverage you believe it should be getting,
or any league deserves.
Right? Especially in a Canadian, it's the Canadian Football League.
Okay, well, we'll pick up that point, but let me go back
and
give you my 2 cents about why it's good for him to cross the country. Most of all, it's for an introduction, to shake the hand of some fans, be available to some fans, let them see who he is, listen to who he is, give them a chance to understand, his passion for this game and his willingness to do that. Now you can carry on your next point.
Well, I mean, I just think it's important to, if you are trying to get your league to take that next step, understand different mediums. He talks about talking to the team that does digital. He's going to be vastly disappointed in the CFL, in my opinion, in how the CFL has approached that. I feel like they've taken a step back when it comes to their content. They've let go people. Frank, you and I both know people have been let go.
That's the main reason. The main reason is that they don't have the manpower to do the kind of stuff. Ideas are great, but if you don't have if
you can't execute them, don't even bother bringing them up.
Yeah, well, that unfortunately is what happened a couple of years ago when they had no statistics for us to look at. Yeah. After games. But again, I hope I'm not giving the impression that that I'm trying to stick on problems they've had. At the end of the day, this commissioner, and I hope there's a bit of a financial cash somewhere for him, because they knew they were getting a new commissioner to give him a running start. So if he has some money that he can spend with some of the frugally spend the money on ways to improve those things that you're talking about, and those things that you and I both know, and I agree with you 100%, is like he would, he talked about this being the league focusing on entertainment. Well, focusing on entertainment costs money, because entertainment isn't free. So if you're going to use, if I'm taking the idea that, for example, just a foolish connection, no knowledge, no insight, the Canadian Football League's British Columbia Lions, the owner came in, first thing he did is he had a big concert. It really raised the level of people's expectation on the big league type of sports thing. So there's going to be money that's going to be spent. Hopefully they've got a bit of a cash there. So he's got something to work with, right? Because for now, it doesn't seem like the CFL's had a lot of money to work with. So to your point, I think that's important. The question then becomes, and I know you can pick up on this, how do the fans get entertained or invited to engage with the Canadian Football League?
That's the million. That's kind of the big question for him, right?
Yeah.
The thing is what has led to a drop in attendance, right? Or the lack of interest. One, I hate to say this, and again, I don't always like to bring the media into it, but you got fewer people covering the CFL, fewer people under a certain age covering the CFL. We were, Frankie and I did a big. We got a chance to meet all the reporters in Canada that cover this league, or the majority of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say 80% or above a certain age. They're not my age. I felt like I probably wasn't the youngest in the room, but I was probably among the youngest in the room. And the problem here too is you got people who cover the league, right, on a professional level. And you got people who cover the league that don't get paid for it, not because they don't want to be paid for it. It's because there's not that opportunity to make money off of it, because there's just not a lot of places that want the coverage, or willing. Sorry, they want the coverage. They may just not be willing to pay for it, right?
We heard that at the press conference. Basically, there was I won't throw anybody under the bus, but I will say there was a reporter who's been covering the Canadian Football League for 40 years, and he would like to continue covering them, but the organization he works for has taken all the reporters off the CFL. They don't have, a reporter that goes, to all the teams, and it's a national newspaper I'm referring to. So that's as close to under the bus as I'm going to throw them. The point is there aren't many reporters now. You've got, again, I don't want to throw organizations, towns, cities, whatever under the bus, but there are cities in the Canadian Football League that have literally one or two reporters, and sadly a couple of them is all that you can get to show up. Now hopefully that's a reflection of how poorly a team does, and if a team does better, there'll be more interest. But at the end of the day, that still speaks to the point that you're making, which is, how do you get people interested in covering the game? How do you get them to be interested? Well, I think all these things, David, are tied all together. The reporters will follow the people. As long as the people go and interest is there, right? Then maybe, the media will follow. It just seems shameful that, some of the stuff that's going on in the Canadian Football League, some of the games that are going on in the Canadian Football League, some of the battles for playoff position, there's a lot of excitement that's missed because there's no media there to tell everybody what's going on.
Well, yeah, there's the people like people. There's no. It's not even that there's no people to cover it. It's not covering on a consistent basis.
Yeah, that even if they did that, they don't do it consistently. I get your point.
right? They're not at practice every day. And look, I'm not at practice every day. I can't get there myself every day. So you kind of have to work with what you got. But
well, you're a good example because you have other sports that you have to cover.
Yeah.
Right. And you're predisposed to go where the people that hire you pay you to go.
Exactly. Right. And so that to me, that's a big hurdle for this commissioner. And this is where when you have a partner like TSN, and I guess this probably has to be something he'll talk about with them. Okay, you're going to broadcast our games. What else are you going to do? Right? I bring up Sportsnet for this reason because we've made sure now to have writers in every Canadian city providing content on the team. And we always talk about, gotta make sure we're talking about all the teams, right? Not just on our TV platform, but also on our digital platform.
Yeah, podcasts.
Podcasts written. People are coming looking for content provided for them, and they should hopefully come. The CFL doesn't get that. It doesn't get it enough for people to be crave. Again, maybe it's because there isn't a big amount audience craving for it. Well, you got to create that audience. You got to create that supply, and the demand should hopefully follow. Right? And he talks about, getting younger people interested in the game. And he brings up flag football. But one thing he doesn't bring up, youth sports.
Well, that's what he's talking about when he says flag football, because that's what that is. And I know from here in this town, I've had a chance to speak to some people at the town, and I've had a chance to actually speak to somebody who opened my eyes a little bit to tell me that flag football and football's on the rise, which goes against what I thought was going on in the city of Toronto. Now, I'm only getting partially into here because I'm always, everything that goes on with the Argonauts is about Toronto. They reach out to Toronto schools. They reach out to Toronto, whatever, that's where their ticket base they feel is. So out here around Barrie and where I am in Wasaga, nobody really knows what's going on here there about football that's going on here. And I'm curious whether there's a surprise here that maybe somebody should be able to expose. And that is flag football a big deal in this community? And if so, not only are they people who can help promote the game of football, they can also be the people who be interested in going to football games, because that's who goes to football games: football players, football families. I'll go to my grave saying that.
Well, that's it. It's also, if you want to go and see a game, how hard is it for somebody in Wasaga to make the trip down to Toronto for a game on a Thursday night, on a Friday night?
A lot easier this year than it was. I could tell you it'll be a lot easier now.
It will be so much easier now that they're going to have some games on the weekend, and not just on the weekend, during the day.
Because that 2 hours traveling home makes the end of the game. You add that to the end of the game, it makes it interesting. And if you're thinking about bringing a family, let's say you've got a couple of flag football players in the family, boys and girls, doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both. And you want to go to the game, and the game ends at, like, when it starts at 7, it ends at 10, and the kids are home in bed by midnight. Not a good plan. So now they're going to have 4 o'clock afternoon games, or 6, something like that. They're going to go somewhere in between there. So you're going to have time to get the kids home at a reasonable hour, and it'll be more family friendly. And that's what the league has to do. It has to figure out the best way to make the fan base younger is to make it a good idea for families to come. That's important.
It is, because you're going to get the people who are committed every week to go to games. It's how do you get those who are looking for those secondary options, right? And so the summertime's hard. I get it. You got a lot of other competition. In Toronto, you got the Blue Jays and you got TFC. Although TFC has been very bad, so there's an opportunity. Go take advantage of a team that's not doing well, and you actually might be able to get some fans to come out to the game because they might be looking for a team that's actually a winner, right? And you can't. I don't think you can totally disregard that as a potential opportunity. So, if I'm the CFL, you gotta, and if I'm the Argos, if I'm the CFL, you gotta find a way to make sure that you're putting on a product and you're doing it something that will engage people to want to come in those summer months.
Absolutely.
It's not easy. I get it. You've got to fight with a lot of competition, but you got to show that you're not gonna back down from the competition either.
Yeah, see, the problem, the step that the CFL has to establish and why it's so hard in the Toronto market is because the Leafs have a real strong cachet, right? They have a cachet. The Toronto Blue Jays, they have a cachet. Now you start getting down to the NBA and then you talked about TFC. TFC is a team that plays much of its season. Now they're going to go more into winter. So there's an opening here for the CFL because a lot of the Canadian teams have have MLS teams. So if their schedules now are earlier than the Canadian Football League and end a lot sooner, there might be some free time there to be the only alternative in town in regards to going to see live sports. The point, though, isn't that there's an opportunity. It's that you create a situation where people are interested, where they're proactively wanting to be a part of the Canadian Football League. It's the fact that there's an opportunity for an opening in regards to how many people show up because there's nothing else going on. That's great. But you can't assume to bring people in and there's nothing for them to see that they'll enjoy. So we talked about entertainment. We talked about the commissioner going to all the cities. He's going to get a good chance to see fan reaction in every other city. And he's going to see positive fan reaction. And he's going to see very positive fan reaction. And he, as a commissioner, is going to take notes, I believe, and ask himself to ask the CFL themselves as a league, how can they emulate the organizations that are being successful? And I'll point to BC as far as everything except on the field that they've done as a good thing to look at and to try and do elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean they do have that. They have something that they can feed off of, right? They have success from other teams. So if you're trying to figure out, how do we get so-and-so team to be on that same level? It's kind of very easy. Go and talk to the other clubs that have taken advantage, that have seen the benefits of, look, we've got BC has done so well. Now, I'm sure there's areas that BC would still want to work on, absolutely. But it's not to the degree that I think that it was like in the past.
Agreed.
Right? BC, it was almost like, is it going to survive? Would BC be able to handle the, where this handle having a CFL team? There was even talks about whether the Vancouver team was going to stay in MLS. Like, I think as a country, we also need to kind of reorganize or rethink about how we are handling sports in this country. Because when it comes to hockey, no one touches hockey, right? It's like no one's thinking about, is hockey going to be able to survive in Canada? But we always hear about it with football, with CFL especially. Not too much soccer, because soccer is becoming universal. international game, you got people who watch it on international levels and they'll support the Canadians for sure. But it doesn't have the football has to always lag behind what football with hockey, with baseball, with soccer, with basketball, because those also have the international appeal. There's a bit of pride within your own country. Would you say, Frank, that in Canada, people have the same pride for Canadian football than they do the other sports? I don't think so.
I think it's a smaller group of people.
Yep.
There is the intensity of dedication to the game and loyalty to the game. It's just a much smaller pool. And that's the issue. How to make that pool bigger. How to build on that smaller group of people that are dedicated to Canadian Football League. And I have to say, there's the hope that patriotism and this being a league of Canadian teams, maybe they're, Canadians aren't shopping American off the shelves. Can they be willing to give Canada a chance in their football, which is the Canadian Football League? But I guess one of the things that he said as well, that he needs to reach out to his partners and, Canadian institutions that they can work with and to partner with. Who are they? I'm dying to find out from him who he's reaching out to, who he feels he should reach out to. I think that can be also big corporations seeing, it's been a while since the Canadian Football League has had a long list of big corporations supporting the game. If there was something to do to get their input as well, to see what would it take for them to get involved. I mean, advertising has two things going for it. One, it brings money to the league. Two, I think it brings evidence of the league being important. The bigger the sponsors, the more important, to me, I feel, the leagues are. And when big companies or institutions that get involved with the Canadian Football League, they'll attract other institutions that are smaller. Well, if they're getting involved. So for me, it's all about putting the Canadian Football League in the forefront of the Canadian psyche, however you can do it. Now, you brought the point. Can it get can it be as important as hockey? Not today, but why not aim towards it? You pointed out about MLS. There's no reason why the Canadian Football League can't compete with MLS. How do they do it? That's what we're hoping this new commissioner figures out, that Rubik's Cube. Can he do that? But, the good news for me, and I got to say, the good news for me, the last few years, ownership's great. The game is in a good place. There's always people who don't like 100% the way the rules are laid out. There's always a problem in the rules, but for the most part, a lot of rules were changed under Ambrosy's rule that made the game better. And I think that's at least somewhere they've got to start. They can concentrate now on how to bring attention to the game. That's what the commissioner's job is. I believe that's what the ownership is saying. Okay, now you come from broadcasting, you come from trying to reach viewers. Now we're going to ask you to do what you learned at TSN and what you know at TSN and help us do that. And he mentioned it. He talked about the internet and how it can contribute to new fans and lower the age group of the people that go to the Canadian Football League.
Well, that's it, right? How do you find new ways to get people in the door? How do you do it in a way that really hasn't been done before? What are you going to do because to me, TSN does a good job of putting out a CFL broadcast. But has there been any innovation when it comes to the way that it's being packaged? To me, it looks like the same product year after year after year. That's not to say that's not a good thing. But let's be honest here, Frank. We know that there's always room for improvement. There's always room for things to be different, to change, to innovate, to make it look fresh, and not just we like the way it is, so we're just gonna keep it the same way. Well, no. You got to find a way to gravitate towards your audience, and you got to do it in a way that it's going to be appealing to a wide audience.
You got to meet them where they are.
Exactly. And personally, I don't think it's been done. I don't think the league has done it either. Yeah, they are getting a bit better at making sure that they have content coming out on the different channels that now you need to be on. But I could tell people, so even CFL fans, about certain players on the team, and they just like, I got no clue who those people are.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
I hear you. Well, here's what I want to talk about the flag football, and it's going to get personal now. Personal to me. I'm here in town, part of the Legion. The district that I'm in surrounds Barrie. We do sports activities for children, and I'm trying to start the first annual, I'll call it, flag football celebration is what I call it. And I'm hoping to have the Grey Cup as a guest. And I'm hoping to see how many teams the Legion can put together, how many teams can come from the community to raise the profile of flag football. And we have on our Legion property, we have lots of room for flag football fields. And we have one contact football field, which we could do an exhibition there. Now, I'm finding a little bit of excitement in the game, but I'm having a hard time finding an infrastructure that will allow me to put this together. It's frustrating because when you're starting something new, if you don't have partners that have an invested interest like the town in the fields and making them available to players, to teams, access to organizations that have a bit of a history and have teams so that you can reach out to them. If you know any, send them my way, please. I reached out to a couple, and I've heard that actually all that's up there is the webpage. They're not a league or an organization anymore. And that's frustrating, right? But I've heard from a local guy whom I respect that he's part of flag football, and he says there's a lot of it going on. So I'll keep looking for it. I'll keep working towards it and try to achieve the goal that I'm trying to achieve, which is bringing football players, people who want to play football, bring them together and have an event and maybe even, raise the profile of the game of football to the point where a couple of them will go, you know what? I really love playing this football. Let's go check out a game. Because I do know the people who play will be interested, in going. One of the biggest reasons why people go to the baseball game is everybody's on a baseball team.
Yep.
Right. So,
and it's not like they're playing, competitive baseball. It's recreation softball, even.
But what does everybody do? You talked about hockey. What does everybody do when it comes to playing hockey as a child? They're thinking about playing in the Stanley Cup final in overtime and scoring the winning goal. I know there's some people that say making the big save in overtime. I'm sure there's a couple of those too. How do we know that's true? Because we've heard player after player after player in that situation have told us, you in the media, I as a fan, have said to us, this is amazing. I'm living out my dream. I'm playing in the game I dreamed about as a kid. It confirms, and that's just a representation of a whole swath of people who love the game of hockey, and they're invested in it. Baseball, they're invested in it. Somehow football, the Canadian Football League, it's up to them. It's for their own gain. They have to figure out how to get people invested in football beyond the players that play college football, beyond the players that play high school football. The numbers in Toronto, I believe, are shrinking for high school football teams. I don't know. Do you know if it's changing? Is it getting better?
I couldn't give you the number. I know some who are. I know when I was in high school, I didn't have a football team. I would have loved to have played high school football. I didn't have that opportunity.
Well, that's where flag football comes in, because unfortunately we went through a real dark time for football. Anybody who's been around 10, 15 years, that short a time, knows the dark days of football. And anyway, I don't want to go back there because we've worked our way past it. There's been corrections made, a better understanding of the game and all that stuff. So now it's just a question of the league. We have the commissioner mentioned flag football. So there you go. He knows that that's a connection that they should help grow. And I'm just wondering whether the league is willing to come up to places like this. Are they willing to go into the grassroots communities, the smaller communities, to help promote the game? That's the challenge that I'm up against and that I want to try and succeed in. I don't know if I can, David. I have to tell you, I'm very frustrated. But you know what? I love this game. We do this show because I love the game. I'm even before all this stuff happened with the US and Canada, I've always been a patriot. I'm the guy that roots for all the Canadian teams in hockey. That's who I am. It's part of what I am. I want to see, Canadian cities, and I blame the Canadian Football League for this, because I've seen what it's like when Toronto wins, when Montreal wins, when Saskatchewan wins, when BC wins, when Winnipeg wins. I see the positive impact it has on the community beyond the football.
Yeah. People get they want to celebrate their teams. They want to celebrate the things that they truly have a passion for, but it doesn't get easy when it feels like they're it's being done at bare bones, just enough to have it out there, but not to the level that they want. They believe it should be.
To make my dream come true, it has to be cost effective, almost zero.
Yeah.
So, I have a threesome that need to be involved: the Legion, the town, and the league. And I should say 4, and whatever organizations exist here that want to take part. I know I could organize it to happen. It's not that difficult. I've organized far more complicated things in my life. Mm-hmm. And therefore I know we could do it. It's just a question of having, people having faith in that we could make it happen and we could make it work. I just know the risk is scary, but I do also know the reward for everybody, the community, our Legion, and the game of football on its own would be impacted so positively. I can't even express how positive it'll be, but I know it would be. How much? The future will tell. So that's what has to happen to help the Canadian Football League survive. There has to be a buy-in by the communities that, it's about loving the game of football. It's about promoting the game of football. It's about being a part of football. It's about playing. It's about, helping kids play the game of football. That's the sure way to get a fan base and a younger fan base. Yeah.
Finding ways to not trying to bring fans in, go to the fans. Right. I constantly hear about we got to reach out to fans. Well, no, you reach out, but go to them. Find ways to get out to your fan base rather than invite them to come in and make it easier for them to say, I don't know. Right. There's a lot of that too. So you got to find a way to expand, to really push that desire to bring people in. And it has to be done more proactively.
Absolutely. It's the tough situation. The Canadian Football League has a new commissioner in Stuart Johnson. You had a chance to see what he had to say. And I hope people who normally don't check out and didn't see that interview when he originally did it, I hope you saw it and it opened your eyes to some issues and maybe helps you to look forward to seeing him in the future. Remember, he's a new commissioner open to new ideas. He isn't protecting any previous ideas. The good news is he's got a blank page, as blank as that page is. I believe it's far more blank than it would be, than a commissioner that's been around for 4 or 5 years. So maybe it's time for new ideas, and maybe you have a sounding board, CFL fans, for a person who may listen to those new ideas. And you know what they say about desperation? It's the greatest inspiration. So it is what it is. David, final words from you on the commissioner, the Canadian Football League at this point, and how much you're looking forward to the season starting.
Good luck to him. Yeah, I'm hopefully tomorrow. We'll see. Maybe tomorrow. I did get a chance to talk to the Argos head coach, just to get some ideas about how things are heading going into training camp. So, fortunate for me, I have a little bit of time to get this story up because nobody else is writing it. So, I will get that out soon, though, for anyone that's looking for a little CFL Argo content before the training camp begins. I'll try to get that done before those guys are on the field. I believe it's coming up soon. Their camps are starting up soon, so we will be getting back into the grind. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, David, thanks for doing this.
All right, thanks, Frank.
You're welcome, buddy. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy your day. And football's on its way. It's May now. It used to be, is it June yet? Well, it's May.